Vast story. The living room was dimly lit. The soft hum of the refrigerator, the only sound in the quiet apartment. Emma sat on the couch, staring at the neatly folded divorce papers on the coffee table. The word divorce felt foreign, heavy, and suffocating. 5 years of marriage with James, 5 years of love, shared dreams, and unspoken promises reduced to a stack of legal jargon, and a sudden, inexplicable decision. She replayed their last few days in her mind. James had been distant, withdrawn, and curt. His affectionate good mornings had turned into hurried nods, his warm embraces replaced by cold avoidance. Every question she asked was met with deflection or silence. And then, last night, he handed her the papers without a word, his face devoid of emotion. Emma's heart ached as she tried to make sense of it. Was it something she said? Something she did? The silence was unbearable, and her mind spiraled into a loop of doubt and guilt. Determined to understand, she decided to confront him when he returned from work. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. That evening, as Emma reached for her phone to call her sister, she heard the sound of James's voice echoing from the hallway. He was speaking with his best friend, Mark, his tone low and hushed. Intrigued and desperate for answers, Emma moved closer to the door, her heart pounding. She wasn't proud of eavesdropping, but she needed to know. You didn't tell her the real reason? Mark's voice was laced with disbelief. No, James replied, his voice heavy with guilt. How could I? She's been nothing but kind and loving. She doesn't deserve this. Emma's breath caught. Her fingers gripped the edge of the doorframe as her knees threatened to give way. What doesn't she deserve? You think she won't find out? Secrets have a way of coming out, man. Mark pressed. Just tell her the truth. She has the right to know. James let out a weary sigh. It's not that simple, Mark. If she knew, it would destroy her. I'm doing this to protect her. Protect her? By breaking her heart? Mark scoffed. That doesn't make any sense. Emma's mind raced, trying to piece together the fragments of their conversation. Protect her from what? What truth could be so devastating that James would rather end their marriage than face it together? Later that night, when James came home, Emma sat waiting at the dining table. Her hands trembled as she clutched a steaming mug of tea, the faint aroma of chamomile doing little to calm her nerves. James hesitated at the doorway, his eyes meeting hers briefly before looking away. James, she began, her voice steady despite the storm brewing inside her. We need to talk. He didn't respond immediately, instead, hanging up his coat and loosening his tie. When he finally sat across from her, his face was a mask of indifference, but his eyes betrayed him there was pain there, and something else she couldn't quite place. I overheard you talking to Mark, she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. I know there's more to this than you're telling me. Please, James, just tell me the truth. James froze, his jaw tightening. For a moment, it seemed as though he might deny it, but then he exhaled deeply, running a hand through his hair. Emma, I never wanted you to find out like this. Find out what? She pressed, her voice rising. You owe me that much, James. After everything we've been through, you can't just walk away without an explanation. He looked away, his hands clenching into fists. I'm sick, Emma. The words hung in the air like a thunderclap, silencing the myriad of thoughts swirling in her mind. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. She stared at him, searching his face for clarity. Sick? She finally managed, her voice barely a whisper. What do you mean? James's shoulders slumped, the weight of his secret finally breaking him. I was diagnosed with a degenerative condition a few months ago. The doctors say it's irreversible. Eventually, I won't be able to take care of myself. I didn't want you to be burdened with that. Emma's heart shattered at his words. Tears welled in her eyes as she reached across the table, her hand finding his. James, why would you think I wouldn't want to be there for you? We promised in sickness and in health. Did those vows mean nothing to you? He shook his head, his voice cracking as he spoke. Of course they meant something. You mean everything to me, Emma. But I couldn't bear the thought of you spending the best years of your life taking care of me. You deserve more than that. You deserve a life filled with joy. Not this. Emma stood, her chair scraping against the floor as she moved to his side. Kneeling beside him, she cupped his face in her hands, forcing him to look at her. You don't get to decide what I deserve, James. That's not your choice to make. I married you because I love you, because I want to face everything life throws at us together. Don't you see? You're not protecting me by pushing me away, you're breaking me." James's tears fell freely now, his facade crumbling under the weight of her words. I didn't want you to regret staying with me." Emma shook her head, her own tears streaming down her face. "The only thing I'd regret is losing you." For a moment, the world seemed to pause as they clung to each other, the unspoken pain and love between them filling the silence. James finally nodded, his arms wrapping around her as if letting go would shatter them both. Second story. The invitation arrived on a crisp autumn morning, but not for me. My best friend, Clara, held it out with a confused smile.
"Looks like your sister's getting married,"
she said. I stared at the embossed envelope, my heart sinking as I realized the name on it wasn't mine. Clara didn't seem to notice my discomfort as she chatted about the wedding date, venue, and dress code. I felt a pang of something I couldn't quite name: hurt, anger, disbelief. My sister Anna had always been a little distant, but this was beyond anything I could have imagined. She'd invited all my friends but had somehow excluded me, her only sibling. I tried to brush it off, telling myself it must have been an oversight. Surely, she'd called to clarify. But as the weeks passed, no call came. Instead, I watched as Clara and the rest of my closest friends became swept up in the excitement of the wedding. They gushed about Anna's gown, the carefully curated playlist, and the breathtaking venue. I nodded along, feigning indifference while my heart ached with every mention of the event I'd been deliberately left out of. The night before the wedding, I received a text from Anna. It was the first direct communication we'd had in months. The message was curt, almost cold. "I hope you're not upset, but I thought it would be best if you didn't come to the wedding. It's nothing personal, I just wanted to avoid drama." Drama? The words stung like a slap. Anna and I hadn't fought recently, nor had there been any lingering issues that would justify this exclusion. I wanted to call her, to demand an explanation, but I knew it wouldn't help. Anna had always been stubborn, her decisions immovable once made. Instead, I spent the day of the wedding in my apartment, scrolling through photos my friends had posted online. There they were, laughing and dancing, all dressed to the nines, and there was Anna, radiant in her white gown, surrounded by people I'd introduced her to, people who should have been celebrating with both of us. My chest tightened as I realized how small and insignificant I'd been made to feel. 2 weeks later, Anna showed up at my door. I hesitated before letting her in, but curiosity got the better of me. She looked tired, her perfectly curated appearance slightly frayed around the edges. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice softer than I'd expected. I crossed my arms and leaned against the doorway. "Talk about what, Anna? The wedding you didn't want me at?" She sighed, running a hand through her hair. "I didn't want things to end up like this." "Like what? Me feeling like I don't matter to you?" My voice cracked, and I hated how vulnerable I sounded. "Do you have any idea how humiliating it was to watch my friends celebrate with you while I wasn't even invited?" Anna looked down, guilt flickering across her face. "I thought I was doing the right thing. You and we've always had a complicated relationship. I didn't want to risk us arguing or making a scene." "Making a scene?" I repeated, incredulous. "When have I ever caused a scene at anything?" "You decided I wasn't worth the risk, Anna. That's what this boils down to." She hesitated, then sat on the edge of my couch, her shoulders slumping. "The wedding wasn't what I thought it would be," she admitted. "I thought inviting your friends would make things feel more lively, but it just felt hollow. People kept asking where you were. It felt like something was missing." I folded my arms tighter, unsure if her words were meant to comfort me or absolve her guilt. "That's because something was missing, Anna. Your sister. The person who's always been there for you, even when you didn't deserve it." Her eyes filled with tears, and for a moment, she didn't say anything. Then, in a voice so quiet I almost didn't hear it, she said, "I was jealous." That caught me off guard. "Jealous? Of what?" "You," she said simply, looking up at me with a mixture of shame and vulnerability. "You've always been the one everyone loves. You're funny, kind, outgoing. I felt like if you were there, you'd outshine me. It was selfish and petty, but I wanted one day to be about me." Her confession hit me like a wave, washing over my anger and replacing it with something more complicated. Anna had always been the more reserved one, but I never realized she carried this kind of insecurity. I sat down